Found the one I've been looking for. The last one. Fine. Took me too long to find it. So we're back in the temporary wood shop today, starting to put things together as y'all just saw. I decided to start with all the lids because they're going to take up a little less room than the pallets will when I start to put them together, so I'll be able to have more room in my shop for longer. So here's a little close-up of the lids. Y'all saw putting on these end pieces, and then these here are little pieces there, basically make a feeder shim from my lid. So this will come in handy when I feed the hives pollen patties or anything like that, maybe do some mite treatments that go on top. And I cut them a little extra short on purpose just for ease of installation. And if the bees want to, they can leave that open for airflow, or that's at least the thinking in my head at least. And if they don't want it, then I've seen them close it up with propolis. So my feeder shims, I make them a little over 1/4 inch, pretty close to 5/16, and that works great for me. It's perfect for a pollen patty when you combine it with the 1/8 inch or 3/16 that's above the top bars of the hive. And some guys, it's just personal preference really, some guys have a separate piece of equipment that as a feeder shim, and their lids are just flat. But personally, I would rather just not have an extra piece of equipment that I have to find somewhere to store, and the extra labor and time that it's going to take to put it on and take it off the hive. The only downside to that is you can get some burr comb between the top bars and the lid because there's that extra space. But I would rather deal with that than all the other things mentioned. I'm using 18 gauge 1/4 inch crown staples to staple these together. I did have some 1 1/4 inch long staples that I was using to shoot through there. The only downside is every now and then you'd get a rogue staple that would deflect and come poking up through here or the other side. So then I'd have to trim that off and hammer it down flush so it wouldn't cut me in the future. And I'm using Titebond 3 glue because these will be outdoor, and the 3's rated for outdoor, the 2's for indoor. I use a lot more than enough glue because I like it to squish out to know I'm using enough. And then I always have a towel and water to wipe up the excess. Really all I do is use my finger and then just wipe it off in there. I have run into one issue though. The thickness of the plywood varies a little bit. So back in the previous video when I was cutting these dados, I made that cut a little too deep on purpose to account for the variance. And what that's making me do is when I put these top cleat pieces on, I want it to be a nice flush fit where I'll have good contact with the glue and everything, have a nice strong joint. But issue with making them a little deeper is a little bit sticks up right here, and some pieces are worse than others, but see, then there's a little gap there. So, and my thinking is over time maybe water could get in there and freeze and as you know, water expands as it freezes, so then that could eventually work this piece loose. So to combat that, I made this little fence set up on the saw out of some scrap I had laying around. And I bring it over here and it's set up so that excess can stick under through there, and I'll feed it through and trim that off. And then it makes it nice and flush like this. So once I get them all to that point, I'm gonna have to handle them again, put them back on the table, and put the top cleats on there, which is really making this real inefficient, which is a downside. But I'd rather do the right thing now than possibly have problems in the future. And to be honest, in hindsight, I probably wouldn't cut the pieces like that. I would just leave them full width and just glue them on the end and staple them and be done with it. So I did make a jig to help me assemble these to make them all fit up real nice and snug, but I discovered it was taking extra time actually, and it was faster to just do it by hand like this. So I'll get one side down flush, get it tacked down, and then this side, as it's sticking up, I'll just use my hand to push down and then use the stapler to push that in like that. Get it tacked down. Go through there, put a few more. Wipe the glue off. And go to the other side. So that's why I have that 2x4 clamped to the other side of the table. I can use it as a solid piece to push up against with the stapler. So enough of me jibber jabbering, let's try to get these knocked out. All right, everybody, we're on to putting the pallets together now. As y'all saw, we just ran through one real quick there. These things are pretty slow and tedious for me. Just a little overview. All my pallets have a 5.5-inch entrance here. That's the way my main pallets are for like my honey production colonies, my 2-way pallets. Now these 3-way pallets are going to be used for 6-frame nukes. As you can see, one here, one in the middle, one over here. Going to have U-clips holding them on the pallet, like so. And these boards here are spaced so that the hive box on the outside cannot go past this edge here. And I did that because I don't want the box hanging over just a little bit, so when I'm like stacking it and loading them on a truck or something, that way if I'm coming down, they can't hang up on something and be lifted up or anything like that. So there's no chance of that happening. I got 2 entrances on this side, on the far side, and then this one's on the opposite side of the pallet. That's for when queens, I'll be making up nukes, putting cells in here. So when the queens go out and get mated, and for their orientation flights, hopefully that'll help them come back to the right box, because if they were all on one side, then they tend to get confused a little bit and go to the wrong box. And then the bees in that box will know she's an outsider and they'll end up killing her. So whatever I can do to increase my chances of her going back to the right box, I'm going to do. So I'm gluing and choosing to glue and staple everything using 7/16 crown staples, all 3/4 inch material. So yeah, just a simple little overview there for anybody who cares. Now let's get to rocking and rolling. Found the one I've been looking for. The last one. Fine. Took me too long to find it. Well, there they be. 150 6-frame nuke lids and 50 3-way nuke pallets.
Took me a while to put them all together, working on it a little bit here and there for a few hours. But they are assembled. So I'm looking forward to getting these things out in the field and putting them to use. I think they'll really do me some good, helping me make up a larger number of nukes a little bit easier. It's still a lot of work, but I think it'll make it a little bit easier. Sure, make them a lot easier to transport and move around. So if y'all haven't noticed by now, I use all migratory equipment, which means as you put the pieces together, everything's flush all the way around. Makes the whole unit square and flush, not one piece sticking out farther than the other. Makes them easier to stack and load, stuff like that, because they will be moved around. I move them a couple times per year. So yeah. So I would say this project is done, but it's not. All this stuff has to be wax dipped. So that's a alternative to painting, a much better alternative to painting in my opinion. It's a way of weatherproofing the woodenware, and it'll last a heck of a lot longer than paint and do a heck of a lot better job. And if y'all care to see my setup for that, how I do it and information about that, just watch the next video. Should be posted right there. But for the rest of y'all, thanks for sticking around till the end, and I hope to see you on the next one.